Imagine the dawn clings to the Theban cliffs like purple bruising, and the rock still holds the night's cold in its pores. You stand at the work gates of Deir el-Medina, where every footstep crunches on stone chips that glitter like frost. You smell flint dust in your nose, chalky and sharp, therefore every breath tastes like work. You hear the village waking behind you, low voices, a donkey's complaint, a baby's thin cry that keeps going too long. You feel your empty stomach twist, not with drama, but with the plain, humiliating fact of it. The beer ration is laid again. The grain ration is laid again. A guard points toward the tomb corridor, black, cool, waiting. Work. But the storeroom behind you answers with a hollow echo, therefore the word work lands like an insult. You look down at your hands. They are the hands that carve eternity for a god king, but they shake like any hungry hands. Imagine knowing that if the rations do not arrive today, your children's mouths keep opening anyway. You step into the normal rhythm because the rhythm usually wins. The schedule rules everything here. Long stretches of labor, short rests, then labor again until the body forgets what softness feels like. You live inside measures and portions, measured grain, measured oil, measured beer, therefore measured obedience. In the new year of the accounting cycle, the delivery is supposed to arrive like sunrise, not because anyone loves you, but because the machine must feed its hands. You see the foreman's face, lined like carved wood, scanning the road where the ration carriers should appear. He squints into the glare as if the sun itself owes him an explanation. You hear the sound that matters most in this village, not the hymn, not the hammer, but the absence of wagon wheels. The storeroom sits close enough to touch, therefore its emptiness feels personal. You walk past jars that should be heavy. You touch a rim, and your finger meets only dust. You smell stale beer in the clay. Old sweetness turns sour because the last jars are scraped clean days ago. Someone mutters a joke that does not land. Someone else swallows hard like swallowing anger. A wife's voice floats from a doorway, too sharp, too tired, arguing over the last handful of emmer. You picture it, grain ground into paste in a clay bowl, stretched thin with water, therefore tasting like surrender. A child cries again, and now it sounds less like pain and more like accusation. The foreman finally speaks the words that change the air. The deliveries are delayed, again. He does not say when. He does not say why. He does not say who. Therefore the sentence hangs like a rope with no knot. You feel your chest tighten. Not only hunger, something else. The sensation of being trapped inside someone else's convenience. You see the guard's eyes flick to your tools. He watches your chisel and mallet the way a man watches a knife on a table, pretending it is ordinary, but calculating the risk. He points again. Work. You stare into the tomb corridor you are supposed to carve. The opening is a mouth of darkness. Cool air leaks out, smelling faintly of old stone and lamp soot. You know what waits inside, the scrape of metal, the sting of dust in your throat, the ache in your wrists, the relentless geometry of lines that must be perfect because eternity does not forgive. But you also know what waits outside your door tonight, a pot that does not boil, a child who licks the inside of a bowl, a wife whose eyes stop asking and start counting. You understand the trap. If you keep working unpaid, hunger finishes you. But if you refuse, the state can crush you. Your hands curl around the chisel like it is a weapon, therefore the tool feels heavier than iron. Imagine the moment you decide to walk. It is not heroic. It is not clean. It is the simple, desperate movement of a body that refuses to be used for free. You shift your weight. Another worker shifts too. Then another. A line forms without a command. You hear sandals scuff, hear a throat clear, hear someone whisper a name of a god under breath as if asking permission. The foreman's eyes widen, therefore his authority suddenly looks like paper held too close to flame. You move as a group, barefoot on warming stone, tools slung like evidence. The sun climbs, therefore the light grows crueler, bleaching the world until every shadow looks like a cut. Your mouth is dry. Your tongue sticks to your teeth. You taste yesterday's fear, stale and metallic. Your stomach is loud enough to shame you, and the shame makes you angry. Therefore you walk faster. The road to the temples is short in distance, but long in consequence. Each step feels like stepping away from the only life allowed, and into a life that does not yet have rules. You see the cliffs to one side, pale stones stacked like bone. You see fields beyond, green in patches, but far enough to mock you. You smell the river wind sometimes, wet reeds, mud, life. Therefore your body remembers what abundance could be. But the wind also carries other smells, animals, sweat, smoke from cooking fires you cannot afford to feed. You pass a small shrine, and the painted eyes of a god seem to follow. You do not know if the god judges you or pities you. That uncertainty sits in your spine like a pebble you cannot shake out. You do not know who steals time from your life. The mind reaches for a villain because hunger demands a face to hate. But the face keeps changing. Maybe the supply chain breaks after years of war and raids, therefore the granaries bleed faster than they fill. Maybe corrupt hands skim grain, measuring out your life in secret handfuls. Maybe the bureaucracy chokes on its own seals and paperwork, and while scribes argue over marks on papyrus, children chew on nothing. You hear rumors like flies, ships attacked, officials bribed, storehouses miscounted. But rumors do not fill a bowl. The risk rides with you. You feel it between your shoulder blades, the sense of being watched by men who carry sticks. You know what can happen if a worker becomes a lesson. Walk into a temple precinct and someone can accuse you of sacrilege. Someone can call you disorder. Someone can decide you disappear into a cell that smells of urine and old rope, therefore your name becomes a whisper. You look at the others and see the same calculation behind their eyes. How far is too far? How loud is too loud? How hungry is hungry enough to gamble your bones? Leaders among you argue in whispers, therefore the group's breath becomes one shared secret. Do you sit in at the Ramesseum, where stone statues stare down like frozen judges? Or do you march to Medinet Habu, where the Pharaoh's power lives behind walls thick enough to swallow screams? Every choice is a door that might lock behind you. Someone says, if we go too far, they kill us. Another says, if we go nowhere, hunger kills us. The words land like stones in a shallow pool, therefore the ripples hit everyone. Hunger turns you sharp and slow at the same time. Your thoughts come in flashes, but your limbs feel heavy, as if the bones fill with sand. You stand and dizziness swims up from your gut, therefore you blink hard and pretend the world is steady. You try to drink from a skin that feels lighter than it should. The water is warm, with a faint animal taste, therefore it does not satisfy, but it keeps you moving. You hear someone cough, dry, scraping. You smell sweat turning sour on bodies that cannot spare energy to cool themselves. The first officials appear before the first solution does. A man in clean linen steps out with the confidence of a full stomach. He holds his chin high as if height equals truth. He asks what this is. His voice is smooth, therefore it tries to make the problem sound small. You answer with the plain words that cannot be polished. We are hungry. He says tomorrow. He says soon. He says orders. The words float like oil on water, therefore they do not mix with reality. Someone behind you laughs once, bitter and short, then stops because laughter costs breath. Scraps appear like bait. A small measure of something, perhaps a little grain, perhaps a jug half full, offered as proof of goodwill. But the offering is too little and too late, therefore it feels like an insult wrapped in politeness. The official tries another weapon, division. He gestures towards senior craftsmen first, apprentices later. You feel the group tense. You hear the quiet crack of trust like dry wood. The apprentices glance down, ashamed. The seniors glance away, tempted. Hunger makes selfishness sound like reason, therefore the line threatens to break. But someone speaks from the middle, voice hoarse, making the simplest law. All eat or none eat. The words travel fast. You see shoulders straighten. You see hands tighten on tool straps. The official's face hardens, therefore he understands this is not a complaint anymore. It is a refusal. You realize something in the walking. This is not only asking for bread. This is accusing the machinery of Egypt of lying. The machine claims it is eternal. It claims it is ordered. It claims every man has his place, therefore every stomach has its portion. But here is an empty storeroom. Here is a child crying. Here are the hands that make the pharaoh immortal refusing to move. Lies are guarded like treasure, therefore the danger is not the hunger, but the truth spoken aloud. The sun reaches its cruel height, and the courtyard stones hammer heat up into your feet. You arrive at a place where you are not supposed to sit, therefore sitting becomes a kind of trespass. You lower yourself to the ground with the careful movement of men whose joints ache. Dust puffs. Your tools clink softly. You feel the heat radiate through your bones, therefore the body protests, but you stay. You stay because moving back means surrender, and surrender tastes worse than thirst. You see temple walls rising, painted and carved, telling stories of order and victory. The stone is cool to look at, but the air in front of it shimmers. You hear your own voices echoing. The echo makes every word sound larger, therefore the courtyard feels like a mouth repeating your hunger back at you. You smell incense drifting from somewhere deeper inside, sweet smoke that belongs to gods, not to workers. The smell makes your empty belly lurch. A scribe arrives. He carries fresh papyrus, rolled and crisp, and an ink pot dark as a bruise. He looks at you like a storm he cannot calculate. You see his reed pen between his fingers, delicate as a bird bone. You think of your chisel, thick, blunt, honest. He crouches, therefore he comes closer to your level, but his eyes still measure you like a problem. This is the knife edge. The moment your strike becomes history or becomes a massacre. A line of guards appears, spear tips winking in the sun. They move in a slow, practiced rhythm, therefore their calm feels like a threat. You smell sweat and leather and fear, your own, theirs, everyone's. Fear is a shared odor, sharp and sour. One guard's hand adjusts on a spear shaft. The wood creaks. The sound seems too loud. An official steps forward. His lips pressed tight like a sealed jar. He demands you return to the tomb. He says the work must continue. He says the king's project cannot wait. His voice tries to be heavy as stone, therefore it dares you to test it. Your throat is raw, but you speak anyway, because if you do not, your children will. The words come out rough, scraped from the bottom of you. We are hungry. We have no grain. No beer. No oil. We cannot work. Silence follows, thick as mud. You hear a fly. You hear someone swallow. You hear the distant clatter of a door somewhere inside the temple. The small sounds become enormous because everything else holds still. The official's eyes flick to the scribe. The scribe hesitates. There is a beat where the pen hovers and the world waits. Then the scribe writes. The reed scratches the papyrus. The sound is thin but relentless, therefore it feels louder than the spears. Each stroke traps your hunger into marks that cannot be unspoken. You feel something strange, fear, but also a hardening relief. Because spoken hunger can be dismissed, but written hunger becomes evidence. But the ink can also become a net. You do not know if those marks save you or mark you. You glance at the guards. One looks away quickly as if your eyes burn. Another stares too long, therefore he looks like a man waiting for permission to hurt. Fog of war hangs over everything. You cannot see the storerooms behind the walls. You cannot know if carts already roll toward you with grain, or if the state chooses, right now, to let you starve into obedience. You cannot know if a higher official reads the scribe's marks and laughs, therefore deciding to make an example. You sit and sweat and wait, and waiting becomes its own torture. The sun does not pause for justice. The heat keeps pressing down like a hand. Hours drag like a heavy rope. Someone beside you shifts and winces. Someone rubs a calf cramp with trembling fingers. Someone whispers a prayer to a household god, low enough that the guards cannot claim it as a spell. You smell your own armpits, sharp and sour. You smell stone baking. You smell the faint sweetness of temple offerings you cannot touch. Therefore the world feels divided into those who eat and those who bow. Officials return with new faces and the same words. Tomorrow. Soon. Patience. They speak as if patience is a ration they can hand out. But patience does not sit in a child's belly. Someone in your group holds up a hand, calloused palm open, empty. The gesture says everything without shouting. The guards shift again, therefore the spear line tightens. Then comes a dangerous softness. A negotiator offers partial payment. He suggests a compromise that sounds reasonable because hunger makes any crumb sound like mercy. He says a little grain now, the rest later. He says oil next time. He says beer when the wagons arrive. Therefore, he tries to turn your unity into separate promises, one man at a time. You feel the temptation hit like a wave. Take something, anything, go home. Let tomorrow be tomorrow. But you also feel the anger under that wave. Because tomorrow has already happened too many times. You see the group's faces. Sunken cheeks. Tight mouths. Eyes too bright because the body runs on fumes. You see an apprentice's hand shaking on a tool strap. You see an older craftsman's lips peel back from teeth in a grimace that is almost a smile, almost. Therefore you understand, this is not only about food. It is about being treated as if your life is a margin note. The sit-in holds. You stay planted on forbidden stone. You refuse to disappear back into the tomb like obedient ants. The officials retreat to argue behind walls. You cannot hear the arguments, therefore the imagination fills the silence with worst outcomes: soldiers, whips, prison, names erased. You feel sweat drying into salt on your skin, crusting your temples. The salt stings. It makes blinking painful, therefore even your eyes pay a price for defiance. At last, the light begins to shift. The heat breaks in small mercies as shadows lengthen. The courtyard's glare softens. A breeze moves, carrying dust and distant river damp. You hear a sound that does not belong to argument, jars clinking. It is a small sound, but it lands in your body like thunder. You see movement at an entrance, men carrying something heavy. You cannot tell how much. You cannot tell if it is real payment or another performance. Therefore hope arrives with suspicion in the same breath. The jars come closer. Clay knocks clay. Rope creaks under weight. A worker from inside the system avoids your eyes as if shame burns. You smell grain, dry, dusty, honest. You smell beer, yeasty, thick, alive. You smell oil faintly, fat, and rich. The smells hit the back of your throat, therefore your mouth floods with saliva like betrayal. The distribution begins. Hands reach, then stop, then reach again. Nobody wants to be the first to break the line. But hunger is not a theory. Someone accepts a measure and the group does not collapse. Therefore the fear of division eases, just enough. You take your portion. The grain feels gritty between fingers. The jar feels cool against palm for a moment, then warms. You feel the weight and realize it is not enough to erase the fear. It is enough to keep you alive another week. That is what victory looks like here, not triumph, but survival. You eat slowly, because eating too fast hurts when you have been empty too long. You feel the first swallow scrape a throat that has forgotten comfort. Your belly clenches, then settles. You taste the rough sweetness of grain, the sour comfort of beer. The taste is almost shocking because it reminds you the body can feel something besides hunger. Around you, men chew with their eyes half closed. Therefore the courtyard becomes a place of quiet, animal relief. But the cost sits beside the food like an unwanted guest. You look at your hands and see more than dust. You see leverage. You also see the price. Because something cracks today, not only the seal on a grain jar, but the illusion that the system never fails. The village will remember who speaks, who flinches, who tries to bargain separately. Trust is thinner now. You feel it in sideways glances, in silences that used to hold jokes. Therefore even victory leaves bruises. You sense the officials watching. Their eyes measure the group differently now. You are not only workers, you are a possibility. The guards loosen their line, but their hands never leave their weapons. The message is clear without words. This time ends without blood, but the next time is uncertain. Therefore the relief never becomes safety. The scribe rolls his papyrus, ink drying into permanence. That roll looks small, therefore it seems impossible it can outlast stone. But it does. The record becomes a shield across millennia, proof that ordinary workers can force the state to respond when the pay stops. You feel the strange weight of being written down, not as a hero carved on a wall, but as a hungry human refusing to vanish. Now the dust settles, and the verdict arrives in the body. The cost counts itself in soreness, in risk, in the knowledge that the next delayed ration sparks faster anger. The cost also counts itself in a new understanding. The Pharaoh's eternity depends on your dinner. The God King's tomb depends on oil in a lamp, beer in a belly, grain in a jar. Therefore, the most sacred project in the land rests on something painfully ordinary: payment. The mirror turns toward the present, and the sting is immediate. Do you see how the strike does not begin with ideology? It begins with a missing payday, an empty pantry, and leaders who keep saying tomorrow. In any era, 1152 BC or 2026, the moment the pay system fails, society does not collapse in speeches. It collapses in kitchens. You feel it here in the courtyard. The political crisis is a child crying too long. The administrative failure is a jar that stays empty. Therefore, the grand story of a civilization narrows to a single question: who eats tonight? Legacy presses close, therefore it becomes personal. Labor is not just work. It is the mechanism that keeps the world from going dark. When the mechanism slips, the lie of permanence shows its seams. You leave the temple precinct with your ration in hand, but you do not leave as the same person who arrives. You carry food, yes, but you also carry knowledge, dangerous knowledge, that refusal can move stone walls more than prayers. The path back to the village feels different under your feet. The stone chips still glitter. The air still tastes of flint dust. But now, behind every familiar sound, there is a question that does not fade. So here is the legacy question, uncomfortably simple and impossible to outsource. When tomorrow becomes a weapon used against your own hunger, what line do you draw, quietly, together, and before the darkness in the kitchen becomes normal?